Welcome to this part 2 of Places in News for UPSC Prelims 2025. In the part 1 of the video, we have discussed how UPSC derives its inspiration from various events that are happening in international relations and how that transforms into map. As a continuation of that video, we are looking at the conflict zones that I have promised in the present video. The first one amongst that is the India-Myanmar issue. I'll be also picking up certain important facts from the previous year questions and embedded within this particular series itself. So, Myanmar has been in news because of the military coup that happened in 2021. Ever since, Myanmar was termed as the sick man of Southeast Asia. This is a map of all the important places that can be potentially asked in question. Also, I will be giving you cues on what to focus on. Apart from that, Myanmar shares a border with our country. What are the bordering states? We need to focus on that as. What are the countries that share a boundary with Myanmar? This is also an important. But first things first. From ancient history standpoint, Myanmar region has been termed as Suvarna Bhumi or the land of gold. Is this statement true or false? I want you to post in the comment section below. Secondly, look at this map here. If you want to remember the states that are sharing the boundary with Myanmar, these are the states: Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, and Mizoram. You can remember it like this: Arun Namami, Namami. Okay. Tripura does not share a border with Myanmar. This can be a confusing point for a lot of people. And the state that shares the highest or the largest boundary with Myanmar is Arunachal Pradesh with 520 kilometers. The least is Nagaland with 215 kilometers. Unlikely that you will get this level of depth in the questions, but just in case, if you want to be sure, this is the points that you have to prepare. Now, with respect to the map of Myanmar, where do you get questions from? Usually, if you take a look at the number of incidents that are in news from a particular region of that country, UPSC has been picking up those points and asking us questions in match the following. Also, I want to bring to your notice the format change. Previously, there were 2-column match the following question. Now, in 2023, UPSC introduced one more method where there are 3-column match the following questions. What do you mean by this 2-column and 3-column? You have to map one point to 2 other parameters that UPSC decides on. In that case, having a comprehensive knowledge like this can help. Now let's take a look at this map here. Take a look at the points that I have marked here. Chin State. This is one important area in news because this area witnessed a significant reduction in the number of conflicts in the past 1.5 years. But look at this Shan State. This area has seen the highest increase in the number of incidents of violence, and you also need to know the context here. One of the most important player in this region is obviously China. China has some important strategic presence, and after the military took over, China has been maintaining cordial relations even with the military. But you have to note one important point. Not every area in Myanmar is controlled completely by the military. There are some areas where civil resistant groups which are fighting the military, they are also important in certain regions. Which regions, etc., may not be important, but I also want to bring to your notice this important state of Rakhine State. This is where you would find the controversial Rohingya refugees. They want to go back to their country, but they're also scared that they might be get persecuted. So there is an area in Bangladesh where it's called the Cox's Bazar. This is the refugee camp for a lot of Rohingya Muslims. So this can also be a potential question. Some other places which are in news is, take a look at this. China has some strategic presence like we have already discussed. What is that strategic presence? There is this Strait of Malacca, if you can see here. This Strait of Malacca is a strategic choke point because a lot of ships move from the strait. And if China wants to bypass this, Myanmar is very important for them. So they built a gas and oil pipeline to bypass Strait of Malacca and directly take the goods into China. This is a part of their Belt and Road Initiative. This is a part of their Belt and Road Initiative. And why are they so focused on this Myanmar part? You can take a look here. By avoiding the Strait of Malacca, they will reduce the distance by as much as 1200 kilometers, which is going to save a lot of time and cost for them. So as a part of this, they've built one important port called Kyokpyu. Okay. They have already, invested in that region, and the government of that region made it a special economic zone, giving some tax incentives for the development of that region. A deep water port has already been planned, and this is something that India finds very controversial, because we don't want our neighbors to have China in their strategic backyard. That's one more important point. Now, you can also get these two questions. Maidstone Dam. This is also a controversial dam internationally. You might get a question here. And there is a very controversial copper mine. Leptadong copper mine. You might get a question on this as well. They can just give you this mine and say, where is this mine? Moving on. So this is the overall thing, or overall things that you have to know in the context of India Myanmar. Moving on. With respect to the geographical aspects, I want you to remember certain important facts that can be asked, because these are taken from the previous year questions, not just of CSE, but also other exams like CAPF, NDA, and other state level exams. So in this context, Arkanyoma, this is completely in Myanmar. I want you to remember this fact. It's an extension of the Himalayas, and within that, you would notice Tongup Pass. This Tongup Pass connects Myanmar to India in Rakhine state. This is an important point. And what are the hills that you would find on the Indo-Myanmar border? Chin Hills and Naga Hills. The longest river of Myanmar is Irrawaddy. Now, an important question for you to think. Please post your answers in the comment section for this question. Would you find Irrawaddy dolphins in India? Yes or no? If yes, where do you find them? Probably. I want your answer in the comment sections. Moving on. Another important place from South America which is in conflict is Colombia. There is an interesting anecdote. A very famous writer, Yuval Noah Harari, has often mentioned that all the battles and the conflicts that we see across the world, or any geopolitical conflicts, are probably the battles of our mind. The takeaway from his fact is the takeaway from this point is the fact that if you take a look at any area across continents, you would notice that whether it is Colombia or whether it is Africa or India, it's probably a battle of power, and most of them are fought because we are not okay with sharing power. It's battle of minds basically. You don't see the same level of aggression in any other living species, except probably for their survival. But human beings think this is a central part of their survival, and that's the reason you would see these conflicts across the world. How do you handle those conflicts? Make you a better bureaucrat. And awareness of this is very important, and that's the reason UPSC keeps on asking all these questions. Anyway, coming back to the topic. Colombia. What are the important cities that you can note in Colombia? What are the borders of Colombia? What are the important rivers that are there in Colombia? This can be asked in UPSC. The first thing, important cities. You know Cartagena. Sounds familiar, right? What is Cartagena Protocol? I want your answers in the comment section below. This is sort of a revision for your environment as well. Please post your answers. Medellin, Cali or Barranquilla, all this are there in news. So you can get, very unlikely, but you can get a question here. What is the capital of Colombia? You can take a look here, Bogota. Okay. So you can see the bordering countries, Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela, Brazil. Note that Colombia does not share its borders with Paraguay and Uruguay. What are the other countries in South America? I want you to be curious. Take a look at the map. Why are we seeing Colombia in news? Because of the political instability. This region is very infamous for drug trafficking. There are many armed conflicts, political instability because of the gang wars therein. And to control this, there is something called a total peace strategy. This can also be asked in question. In which of the following context would you find the mention of the total peace strategy? This is a strategy by Gustavo Petro, who is the Colombian president, It did not work completely, but it worked to a certain extent, wherein the drug cartels and the gang wars were considerably reduced. That is the context of the question. Moving on. Similarly, you would find Mexico also in news for the similar reasons: drug wars, political instability, etc. I just want to mention some names of Mexico and the Mexican cities, which can probably be asked in mass of following questions. You need not by heart it, just recognize it. And it's very likely that you already know a couple of those names: Tabasco and Chihuahua. Chihuahua is a very famous dog breed, and Tabasco is a culinary item. It's a sauce, Tabasco sauce. Everybody knows this. The other two cities that you need to know is Chiapas and Guerrero. Just recognizing them is probably good enough sometime. Okay. Now, if you take a look at the map here, this is the map that is to the south of this red line is Mexico, and there is a state in United States, New Mexico. It's not a part of Mexico, or is it a part of Mexico? I want you to post the answer in the comment sections below here. Okay. Moving on. The next conflict zone that we are talking about is the Africa's Great Lake region. Now you might be confused. There is a Great Lakes region even in the northern part of America. Are these the same? No, they are also called Great Lakes, and this region is also called Great Lakes. Two different things. What are the important lakes in this region? One, you have Victoria, Lake Kivu, Edward, Albert, Tanganyika. There's also Lake Malawi. All the lakes here, and the fact that they share a lot of political boundaries with different countries of Africa, makes it a very important theme for us to pick up and study that. I'll just give you a brief context of the reasons for the conflicts in this region. Firstly, if you take a look at the decolonization history of Africa, you would see that there are a lot of unscientific boundaries which are demarcated. Like if you take a look at the map of Africa, they are in perfect geometrical. They do not have any sociological or ethnic basis for political division of that entire continent, and those colonial era struggles persist even today. Secondly, the reason why these natural resources become a point of contention between many countries is because if these are naturally very rich in the resources that you have, for example, Lake Victoria, it's a very important fishing ground. You would lose a lot of tax revenue. That's one important reason for the conflicts. And these regions are also important environmentally because there are a lot of oil rich places, like for example Lake Albert. You have a lot of oil resources here, and that is also a point of conflict. Environmentally also they're very significant because, let's say for example, Lake Kivu, this has huge basin of methane reserves. We will look at that point later, but it is important to note that this entire region is environmentally, strategically, minerally, and even politically a very contested region which does not get its due attention in the popular media. But UPSC has been picking up themes because Ministry of External Affairs often wants to negotiate with Africa because we are civilizational part. Anyway, moving on, after understanding the importance of this Great Lakes region, we also have to focus on the importance of Congo. If you take a look at the previous year questions and extract data on the number of times Congo was asked in many exams of UPSC, whether it is NDA, CAPF, etc. Out of all the countries in Africa, you would notice that Congo has been mentioned the most number of times. We will understand the reason behind that and why UPSC's favorite country is Congo. But before that, let's focus on one interesting fact any anthropology student you would find this interest. Lake Turkana. You must have heard this name in your anthropology classes. The importance here is it's the largest permanent desert lake. Which desert are we talking about? I want your answer in the comment section below. And it is also the world's largest alkaline lake. Where is this? You can check and get back to me. I can give you the answer, but the fact that you are involving in this research work will help you retain this information. And also, mapping is always about pictographic memory. This search can help you in memorizing these facts. Anyway, let's understand the Congo's global importance. Firstly, from a mapping standpoint, how can UPSC confuse you? Take a look at the map of Congo here. It shares its boundaries with 9 different countries. What if UPSC examiner picks up a country from the Sahel region and puts that in the option? If you don't know the map of Africa, you might get confused. So the first thing that I want you guys to do is understand the 9 countries that share their boundary with Congo. Also, you would notice that there are important lakes in the eastern part of this country, and this eastern part is also a politically contested region because of the density of mineral resources that you would find. What are those? And you will also see there are many ethnic conflicts in this region, and there are many foreign interventions. For example, the French Operation Sangaris. What is this? You can search for that. Not very important directly from a standpoint of UPSC Prelims, that you have to know the history behind it. But if you're curious enough to remember the context, you can do it. What are the important facts that you need to focus on? Each of these facts can be potential statements in UPSC questions. First one, it's the world's second largest rainforest after the Amazon. It stores huge amounts of carbon. Now, we already discussed many times in our classes whether land-based carbon sinks are much more impactful or marine. Those are a part of our classes. Can probably comment in the comment section in our YouTube channel as well. Second point that I want to bring to your notice, Congo River. It's the deepest river in the world. Would you find Victoria Falls here or not? Check and post in the comments. And another thing that I want you to check is this Volta River project. Is this Volta River project again found in Congo, or is it some other country? Why is it important? Because it was asked in UPSC previously. This region is also important because it has vast peatlands, and if something happens to the ecological sanctity of this region, it would disturb the ecological balance of that region completely, and also it will have a cascading effect on our environment. It's important for that reason also. Congo, this is again a previous year question. Congo produces nearly 70% of the world's cobalt, 60 to 70%. And this is an important element in batteries for our e-vehicles, and that's the reason it is important. And also the eastern part where you would find Lake Kivu, this region is very rich in a mineral called coltan, which is important for electronics. And Congo holds the supply for nearly 40% of the global coltan market, and control over this region is again very important. So with the neighboring countries, you would see a lot of conflicts, and there are many groups which are in news with respect to those conflicts. Let's not go into the details, but one specific group, which is called M23 militia, has been in news. If you get the name M23 militia, you just have to associate it with Congo. And the city that is in news with respect to M23 occupying a certain city in Congo is Goma. That's all you need to know. Moving on. What are the other disputes in news? You would see the Lake Malawi dispute. In this context, you just need to know what are the countries that share the boundary. Just by checking this, you would be able to visualize the map, and it will help you in retaining the information. That's the reason I'm giving this as a part of the activity rather than just giving you information. Second thing, this island which is there in Lake Victoria, Migingo Island dispute. This is another contested region between Uganda and Kenya, but now it's settled that it is a part of Kenya. Important fact, nothing much to understand the history behind it, not really important. I'm just showing the map here. Migingo Island is between Uganda and Kenya in Tanzania River. Like I've mentioned, you can take a look at the perfect geometrical shape in which the boundaries are divided, part of the colonial legacy. Now, take a look at this country, Rwanda. It's in news for multiple reasons. If you are someone curious and want to have a multi-level engagement of a particular country with different subjects, for example, international relations and world history, you can go back to the origin of Rome Statute. The need for Rome Statute. What is Rome Statute with respect to International Criminal Court. Something happened in 1994, Rwandan genocide, which led to this Rome Statute. What is that? Please help me by posting your answers in the comment section. Kigali and Kigali Amendment. You would notice this is important in the context of greenhouse gases. What are the greenhouse gases that we are talking about? This can also be important. What are the ethnic groups which are involved in this Rwandan genocide? That can also be a question. What are the ethnic groups? Please post your answers here. A lot of work for you guys to do, but everything is there in news in the past few years. Thematic linking is very important for UPSC. And that's how they ask. Overall, if you take a look at the entire conflict history of this region, you would notice that this can be a great case study. You would notice that there are water conflicts, the need for environmental conservation, and how transboundary cooperation between these countries can solve all these conflicts. Moving on. This is an important article from an international journal. It talks about the strategic importance of this Lake Kivu for our environment. How dangerous is Africa's explosive Lake Kivu? Because I've already told you, this has methane. This lake has methane. And if something happens to that tectonically, all that methane will be released into the environment, and you know that methane is much more potent than carbon dioxide. That's why the safety of this region and the tectonic activity mapping should be carefully tracked, because it has catastrophic significance for our environment as well as our entire earth. A few years ago, there is a very important volcano right next to this lake. It's called Mount Nyaragongo. This can also be asked in the questions, because UPSC has a tendency to pick up random names from the past couple of years and ask them as questions. But the most important takeaway is, you can read from this article, which says that the lake holds equivalent of 2.6 gigatons of CO2, which is equal to 5% of the global annual greenhouse gas emissions. And if something happens to that region and all of that is released in one go, you can imagine what can happen. It can be the worst kind of humanitarian disaster that Earth has ever seen. This is a picture of the depth of that region. A lot of mineral extraction activities are going on this lake, and small projects to extract the methane and use it for our energy resources has been happening from a very long time. But a specific company called Kivu has been trying to ramp up the production. There have been concerns about the possible damage to that environment, but this is what is happening there. You just need to know. Now, the last item that we will be covering as a part of our conflict zones with respect to Africa is the starvation that you are witnessing in Darfur region of Sudan. Sudan was a country which was the largest African nation before it, broke down into two different parts, South Sudan and Sudan. Now, what is the largest African country? Please search and post your answers in the... Okay, now, a small question here. Is Sudan a part of Horn of Africa? Take a look at this. What are the Horn of Africa countries? Do you see Sudan here? No, right? This is a probable area where a lot of aspirants make mistakes. Now, the point that we're talking about is Darfur is a region in North Sudan, or Sudan as it's called, whose capital is Khartoum. You just need to know these facts. Just mugging up. And the context again here is similar ethnic conflicts, power struggles, etc. And one important point that we are supposed to know is World Food Program mentioned that people are starving in this region. They're eating grass and peanut shells for survival, and the ongoing civil war is only getting worse. When will we see the end of this? Only time. That brings us to the end of this conflict zone series in international relations and mapping. More to come. What are the important seas that are there in news? What are the important straits that are there in news? What are the important lakes that are there in news apart from the ones that you've seen here? All of them will be covered in our subsequent. So stay tuned. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe. That's it for now. See you soon.